there. All right. Hello, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. It's your buddy, Mr. G, and we are talking about texture today. Today, we are talking about texture in its two forms that we deal with in art. We're going to eventually make one of these cool little texture cubes here. We'll walk through that. We're going to talk about our project this week. So let's get into it here. All right. So two types of texture. Texture is the quality or the surface quality of a surface. So there's physical texture, like 3D texture, things that you can touch and feel, the tactile ability of feeling something that you can reach out, like this tree bark here. And there's also implied texture, like in a drawing, a photograph, a video, or on television or on the internet, where you see pictures and things where you can't actually feel it, but it is implied that there is texture using line and shape and value to imply that there is texture there. Let's talk about bunnies for a second. So I'm going to show you several bunnies here. So this rabbit here on the left, if we had it in our hands here, would be actual texture, right? You could feel how soft he is and how soft the fur is, and you could tell that the fur kind of flows underneath your fingers. Now on the right, we have an example of implied texture in this drawing of a rabbit here. Okay, now let's also go ahead and move forward to some more bunnies here. Now we have three other bunnies, and they also have different texture. They're all rabbits, but they all have different textures. The first rabbit is a bronze sculpture made from a clay or a wax process, and it has a very rough texture. And then we have two ceramic rabbits here. One has an implied realistic type texture, and the second is very stylized texture, where it has like some very soft imprints of some embossed leaves into it. Okay, so there are different kinds of textures. How many different kinds of textures are there? Well, funny you should ask, because when you start looking around, there is texture everywhere. Everything that has a surface has a surface quality. So if you start looking around your desk and you look at the surface of your desk has a texture quality. Your books, your notebooks, your paper you write on has a texture quality. Your walls, the glass in your windows, your carpet, your floors, your face, your skin, your hair. These are all different textures. So textures are everywhere. I've got some pictures up here of just a whole bunch of different textures. Okay, there are limitless textures, and you start kind of brainstorming and thinking about it. What kind of textures are there? You could go on and on for days talking about how many different textures there are. So any one of these, we could go and we could try to illustrate or draw out into our project here. Okay, so there should be no lack of ideas when it comes to drawing out your textures. Okay. So here are some actual textures that somebody has drawn out. So here are some examples here, okay? These are all just done with black and white, like a ballpoint pen or a fine tip Sharpie, and they are very graphic, okay? If you look over here on the left, we got lots of kind of pattern and line textures. There's some pointillism, some stipple dot kind of illustrations that show gradations from texture, but you could use any of these for your project. Here we have some more realistically rendered textures. Now these are all drawings as well. I've got some braided hair up on the top, and I've got some aluminum foil. Looks like a surface of like the moon or a concrete kind of texture. And we got some wood textures. Now, these are very highly rendered textures, okay? So it's up to you to choose what kind of textures you want to do, okay? But let's go ahead and get into our project, what we're actually doing this week, okay? So this week we have two parts to this project. Part number one is worth 50 points. You're going to make 9 texture squares, okay? This will be in your sketchbook, so you're going to get your pink sketchbook and go ahead and we're going to work on that, and I'll show you exactly what we're doing. The second part is also worth 50 points. It is a 6-sided texture cube, like this little guy right here I'm holding on to. Okay, so let's get into it and talk about how we're going to make these two parts. Okay, first let's gather some materials here. Okay, you are going to need some drawing materials such as pencils or mechanical pencils. You use ballpoint pen or a marker, kind of whatever you want to draw with. And really, it depends on what kind of textures you want to make. For some drawing tools are going to work a little better than others. Okay. Also need some way to cut. When we cut our cereal box, you'll need some way, a pair of scissors. If you have an X-Acto blade like I've got here, you can use that, or a utility knife. Please be very careful. And then you will need a straight edge to make straight lines. Now that could really be anything with a straight line. It could be the side of a book. It could be the side of a cereal box. It could be a straight strip of wood. Or if you have an actual ruler, that'll work too. But you will need a way to measure as well. Okay, now I've got a tape measure and a ruler up here. If you don't have a ruler or a tape measure, I've got up there, you see I've got the top off my cereal box that I made a ruler by just measuring out regular increments with a Lego brick there. And my Lego brick was about 1.25 inches. So I made 1.25 inches about. But it doesn't matter how big it is as long as I can make regular measurements with something. Okay. So if you don't have a ruler, you can make one. Okay. So first thing we're going to do, we're going to get our sketchbooks, okay? And we are going to make some regular marks in our sketchbook along the top edge from the right edge. You're going to measure in and you're going to make 1, 2, 3, 4 marks that are all going to be equilateral apart, okay? In your sketchbook, it's 8.5 by 11, so probably about 2.5 inches is every mark you want to make. And then you want to measure from that left edge, okay? So that you make yourself 3 columns, okay? Again, you're going to use your straight edge to draw those lines. You're going to make those marks at the top, and then you're going to make those marks at the bottom, and then you're going to join them using your straight edge to make straight lines, okay? Now, something that I want to point out on this project, you're also being graded on just kind of like your draftsmanship and your precision that you're able to accomplish this with. Now, you'd think, hey, it's just a square. I can make some squares, Mr. G. But a lot of kids have trouble with this. So please take your time. A little tip on using a ruler. You would think that everybody knows how to use a ruler. But when you use your ruler, you want to I like to stand up. Anytime that I'm measuring, making straight lines, I like to stand up. That way I have my body and my shoulders up over top of my workspace, and I can kind of use my natural weight of my shoulders over my project to hold my ruler down so I don't worry about my hand getting tired. Okay. Now, if I'm standing up, just like I got in this picture here, you'll see I've got my fingers spread nice and wide so that I can fan out my fingers and hold my ruler very steady. You don't want to hold your ruler just like in one point like this because it wobbles. You're giving it a pivot point. So make sure that you spread your hands out, use your ruler nice and wide. And when I have my pencil on the page, make sure that it is perpendicular to your ruler. Don't angle up underneath the edge of the ruler because then a lot of times it'll jump underneath there. So, and I make a couple light strokes rather than making one heavy stroke. Okay. So 3 tips there. Stand up, put your shoulders over top of your project, use your hand nice and wide, and make light strokes rather than heavy strokes. All right, moving forward. All right, once you get that done, you've got your 3 columns made. Now you're going to go along the side and you're going to do the same thing using that same increment of measurement. So about 2.5 inches, you're going to go and make marks down the side so that you can make a set of 9 cubes. So you should have something that looks like this, okay? Again, measure along the top edge and along the bottom edge to make your straight lines. That way you have straight points to work off of, and then work off the side of the paper. And again, I've got my construction lines on there so you can see kind of what I was doing, but you can clean those up if you want, as long as you have 9 equilateral cubes, squares. All right. So now that we've got those, we're going to fill those 9 squares with textures. Okay. So let's just kind of walk through one. Let's do one together here. I'm going to use, my first one's going to be this kind of drippy, waxy kind of texture here. Think of like honey running down the side of a pot, or like wax on a candle or something. So I just kind of start with one squiggly line here. And then I'm going to go behind it and put one more squiggly line there. And I'm just going to use the simple effect of overlap to build a little bit of space there. And then I will keep going until I get to the bottom of my square and kind of stop there. And then I'll go back and I'll add a little bit of texture, okay? Now these projects kind of build on themselves. So last week we did forms and we did simple forms. So think about the shapes that they're making, these kind of lobe shapes that are making with these drips. How would light be affected and how would shadows be cast on these as they go down, okay? And that should help you determine how your shadows are going to go, okay? Let's do another one. Let's do like some bubbles or pimples or warts here, okay? So I start out making just these little simple C shapes here. And then I go in and I start adding some value to them. And again, think about like the sphere and how the light hit the sphere and how light and shadow are going to work on objects that have a rounded texture or a rounded shape and form. And then after I get that done, I go in and add a few more details. This can be as gross as you want it to be. You could add some gross hairs sticking out of them or anything like that. I think the gross textures are way more fun to draw than like, clean ones. Okay, let's do one more here. Let's do a pattern. Okay, pattern is also a form of texture. So when you see pattern on things, you can tell it is a form of texture. Okay, so I drew a square here, and then around that square, I just drew another offset square. And then I continued with that until I filled up my page. And then on 2 of the 4 edges, I added a shadow to create an effect of it, a depth, and it's going down in space. Okay. So there are 3 examples of textures that I came up with and you are welcome to use. Okay. You are going to continue making textures until you have used up all 9 of your squares and have the first part of the project already done. Spectacular. 50 points for you because you got it done. All right, so let's move on to the second part of our project, which is building this little cube. Like this guy here, okay? We are going to build this cube out of that aforementioned cereal box that we collected last week and you were happy to get a hold of so that we can do our art project, okay? If you don't have a cereal box, doesn't have to be a cereal box, could be an instant potato box, could be anything, could be, any box or cardboard that you can find or use. It doesn't really matter, just as long as it's just some thin cardboard that you can draw on the inside of, okay? So it's like makes a nice, good drawing material. All right, so let's get started here. First, I'm going to use on this project, I am using my made ruler here. Again, I just used a Lego brick on the top of my box here, and I made regular increments on here. Again, they're about 1.25 inches was my Lego brick, so I've got about 1.25 inches measurements here, but anything that's a regular size, you could use a salt shaker or the edge of a book or anything to make regular marks on there as long as they're all equal. So I'm making marks on the top of my cereal box here. And again, I'm measuring from the right edge and I am going left. I'm going every 2 marks on my little ruler I made here. So they're about 2.5 inches wide to make, again, 3 columns like you see in the panel on the right. And then I do the same thing along the bottom. And then I draw my straight lines again with a straight edge. And then I do the same thing going down the top. Again, going from that corner, I will have 1, 2, 3, 4 lines I'm going to do down this way. Okay, again, across the top, you're doing 3 sections. Across the bottom, we're doing 4 sections. Okay, again, in the picture, just like I noted, when you're making your straight lines for connecting your lines, stand up. Put your hand, spread your fingers out wide, use your pencil perpendicular so you get nice, clean, straight lines, okay? It's very imperative that you measure and all of your measurements are very accurate so that your cube will fit together properly when you are finished, okay? Take your time and make careful measurements. All right, so on the left is what you are ultimately building for this project here. You need to make a grid with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 squares, okay, that are all exactly the same size because you measured them with your ruler or measuring device that you created, okay? Now, once you have that, okay, you are going to block off just like I have in my picture here. Get out of the way. to kind of make a cross like right there, so that we have these ones with the X's are the ones that we are going to remove and we're not going to use, because we're going to fold this flat two-dimensional product into a cube. All right, so I will carefully go and cut out the X's that I don't need, and I will make a cube shape, or I'll make a cross shape here in which I will do my product on. Okay, I'll start putting my textures. Okay, now you're going to take from your 9 textures that you did before, you're going to take 6 of them that you like the most, or you found the most successful, or you enjoyed doing, and you are going to transfer 6 of those onto the 6 squares that you have here. Okay, I would recommend, if you're using the inside of a cereal box, to use either a ballpoint pen or like a fine point Sharpie or something like that that gives you a nice dark mark. Okay, you can also use pencil or mechanical pencil too. All right, so after you get that all done, I've got all my textures done, Mr. G. What do I do next? Okay, now we're going to fold, again, this flat shape into a cube. Okay, so we need to fold along the edges. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to score my edges. Okay, I did mine by just using a sharp mechanical pencil or a sharp pencil, and I just go and I hit the lines over top of the edges a few more times to give it a nice point for which to bend upon. Okay, so I just scored all the hair. So like right around these edges, this edge, and every separation is where I scored at. And then I just carefully folded it up, and then I held it together with a couple pieces of Scotch tape. Okay, and then bing, bang, boom, you are done with this part of the project. 50 points for you. Okay, now to turn this in, you are going to take 3 photos showing all sides of your cube. Okay, you need to show all 6 sides of your cube. If you take 3 photos and rotate it, you should be able to get all all 6 sides in. Okay, if you want to supply more, please do. Make sure you're taking photographs in good light and on a contrasting surface, like I did mine on a piece of white drawing paper in this photograph here. Okay, so that is the project for this week. Again, there are 2 parts of the project. Each part is for 50 points. The 9 texture squares that you'll draw, any choice of textures you can come up with, and then your actual physical texture cube. Okay, again, you're being graded on your precision on this and your ability to make a nice, neat cube. Okay, so take your time and measure carefully. And if you use your cereal box, save the other half. Maybe we'll use it in a project down the road here. Have a super duper day. Do careful work, and I will talk to you later.